We always complain about the bus is not punctual, there's no parking in the MRT stations, and since we all have a car, so we just drive at the end of the day, right? But there's this one startup, they are trying to disrupt the way we move around. And today my guest is Mr. Ramachandran Muniandy. He's the co-founder and CEO of Asia Mobiliti. Welcome to the show, Ram.
Thank you, Frankie. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, so I give a little bit of introduction about the company, but actually what is Asia Mobiliti?
We are a mobility as a service platform provider, and we provide solutions to be able to digitalize transport across all modes. And the reason why you want to do that is so that transportation modes, be it public transport, private transport, newer modes of transport like shared rides services, can all be integrated to each other, connected to each other. And the net effect of that is that now you've got a mobility as a service feature in a city. And that means as a passenger, as an end user, as a commuter, you don't really need to worry about choosing modes. You just decide where you want to go. And we've got digital systems that will be able to plan those journeys out for you using the best ways to get there across all modes and stitching it with each other. And that means enabling multimodal travel. That's the key thing, right? Like what you've just mentioned, we all drive everywhere. That's a single mode of travel, right? From your door to the next destination, it's door-to-door driving. Right? Very little bit of walking, you walk to your car and that's it. And then you drive in the parking and you walk up, right? That's a single mode travel. And that's the reason why cities like Kuala Lumpur, cities in the developing world struggle with severe congestion. It's because everybody is on a single mode of travel. You are either driving all the way or you're ride-hailing all the way. Right? And that is why we've got an explosion of growth of vehicles on our road, simply because these vehicles compete with public transport.
Yes.
Right? Because you don't drive to a station. There are very few people who drive to a station. Those who do that actually do that on a regular basis, and you've got a very stable, steady pool of people who does that, right? But everybody else are not doing that. And so that is what we do. We are using a digital strategy to integrate transport.
Okay.
Once you do that, a city like Kuala Lumpur will have an integrated transport network without the need for infrastructure modifications.
Okay, I see, I understand. But you see, the problem with our city is congestion. Yes, I know the app comes up with multimodal kind of transportation mode so that you can choose whether you want to go by bus and then you transit to a train and stuff like that. But because of that congestion, the punctuality varies along the way as you travel. Does the system helps to track that as well and update the app, and how does it go about?
Yeah, so we obviously take a multi-pronged approach to solve this problem. It isn't a problem that can be solved easily overnight with a single solution. You need multiple things to happen at the right time in order to be able to bring about a mass scale change. But that change doesn't need to happen overnight actually, right? You go to where the biggest pain points are. And so let's talk about the effects of congestion on public transport. Is the fact that traffic jams has got no effect on rail services, right? But so ground transport. And ground transport means buses, right? So buses are obviously in a lot of our city, we don't have dedicated bus lanes, right? Except for maybe the Sunway BRT, which is an elevated lane, and that shows that that's one of a kind. We are not building that everywhere.
Right. Sometimes even if you have a dedicated bus lane, the cars will just
use
the lane.
Yes. So it's sharing traffic with you and I who are driving, with everybody else who's driving. And so then obviously it is also subject to the same traffic conditions as us. Now, how do you unlock that problem? You unlock that problem by obviously being able to help people plan their journey well in advance, which currently you can't do if you are using public transport or very limited journey planning capabilities. If you choose to decide to use public transport, you lose any sort of reliable means in order to, for example, get an ETA for your destination, right? That's actually one of the major reasons. And I would say, Google Maps and Waze, apps that are meant for driving navigation, actually have contributed to drawing people away from public transport. And it's because of the fact that it gives you control over your journey. You can be driving fine. You can be stuck in traffic, but you're going to be stuck in traffic. You know your ETAs. You can tell whoever that you're going to meet, this is my ETA. You can plan your journey, right? So driving now is a digital experience because of Google Maps and Waze, right?
I haven't seen it that way before.
But public transport does not have a digital experience. And therefore, if you choose to take even an LRT or a bus or any modes of combination that does not involve driving, you would not be able to provide an ETA for yourself. There is no ETA capabilities.
That's true.
Right?
That's true. Now that you said it.
That's the main reason. That's the number one reason why a lot of people choose to drive, because you are in control. right? So you lose that control the moment you leave your car.
Right.
Right?
Interesting.
And that's the problem we are solving. So
Okay.
it is okay to be stuck in traffic. Those who are driving, stuck in traffic, no choice. But with public transport now, that's an alternate option. Especially where rail services are concerned, it's bypassing traffic. If you realize, Federal Highway is almost in parallel with an LRT line at most spots. Right? There's either one nearby, you can see it. And if you take a bird's eye view during peak hours, that's a massive parking lot in Federal Highway, but your rail services are running. You're bypassing traffic actually. So you want to be able to load balance traffic, and that's the big overall strategy here, is not to say, look, traffic jam is bad. We are living with traffic jams already. But if I can help you plan around traffic using other modes of transport, now I can start shift consumer behavior for parking. So rather than driving all the way, park before the traffic happens, hop on a rail line, skip traffic, and I help you with last mile as well, right? So we've built a system that takes into account real-time traffic conditions, ground truths, what's happening on the ground, right? And that is how we have integrated that, so that it is not a system that is artificially planted above what's happening on the city. We actually have got data points and sensors that actually indicate to us the traffic conditions, so that we can give realistic options to people.
Oh, wow. I am truly impressed with what you do, because as a citizen in the city, all I care about is what is the traffic condition when I drive, and I never see it from such a bird eye view that actually you can turn it into a business. And I suppose that is the quality that you need to have as an entrepreneur. And I also understand that you came up with this idea with your neighbor, Prem. Can you share with us the story behind it?
Sure. Yeah. So about 6 years ago, that was when we co-founded Asia Mobiliti, 2018. And Prem was the founder of Malaysia Kini.
Oh, okay. Right.
So up to that point, we've known each other for about a decade. I've had a couple of other small businesses prior to that. And in so doing, I realized that I wanted to work with somebody and not do it on my own, like a solopreneur. I didn't want to be a solopreneur. I didn't want to be a founder. I wanted to be a co-founder. Because in all previous businesses that I did, smaller businesses, there was also a startup, very early startup. I was pretty much in the driver's seat. It was just me, right? But this time I felt, no, in this next season, I got to do it in partnership with somebody.
Entrepreneurship is a lonely journey.
Yes,
so it's good to have a partner together, right?
Yes. And I also felt that, whatever I choose to do now is going to be very purposeful. There's a public impact to it. And so I started keeping my eyes out, my ears open, throwing out ideas. So there was Facebook. We are of that generation, we were quite active with Facebook. He posted something, call for ideas. And he said, I've got an idea that I want to work on. I'm looking for somebody who can work on an idea with me. Business idea, right? So I'm like, wow, I've never seen this. That could have been from me asking the same thing. So I reached out to him, we started talking, and then he heard about what I did 10 years prior to that conversation. And that was my first foray into mobility without me realizing it. What I did 10 years prior to that planted the seed for Asia Mobiliti in 2018. And what happened in 2008, 2009-ish was the dawn of the smartphone. The iPhone was just launched.
Right.
First Android phones were entering the market. And me and my partner back then, we decided to solve the traffic problem by crowdsourcing traffic information from phones.
What does that mean?
Which is basically what Waze does and what Google Maps does.
Okay.
That real-time traffic information that you see on your maps is actually being aggregated, crowdsourced from other users.
I see.
Right?
Okay.
So back then, in the early days of smartphone, there were Google Maps already, but purely for navigation, no real-time traffic information. At least not for Malaysia, not for this part of the world. So we thought, actually, that's the problem we need to solve. We're all stuck in traffic, but we don't have access to information about traffic. So we decided, okay, let's go and start up a company. That was my very first entrepreneurship stint, to basically build a system to do what Waze is doing. But back then, there was no Waze. Waze only entered the market a bit later, about 2010 or so. So we started in 2008 with this idea that was like a Waze-like system for cities in the developing world. At that point, if you track back, the startup ecosystem was non-existent in Malaysia. There were no VCs in Malaysia. There's none of that, right? MDEC had a small pre-seed fund that was open for idea stage companies, pre-seed, right? So they said, you can apply and then we give you money to start up a company. That was the only thing available back then. They were toying with the idea of how do they help new startups, new companies, right? 150,000 ringgit.
Oh, not a lot.
Yeah. Just to get yourself going, right?
Okay.
We applied for that with this idea. They loved it, we got it. My last paying job, I was with Shell IT in Cyberjaya, managing global storage operations. I left that to start up this company, to crowdsource traffic information from your phones. Right? And we built a prototype that worked. We didn't need critical mass for it to be very accurate. So we built an algorithm that did that. But then we didn't know how else to move this. Like MDEC didn't have any way. They had no idea how to grow this, how to scale this, how to fund this. We had no idea. We were trying to look around for support. They said, you got to go Singapore, you got to go elsewhere. We delivered the prototype, but we didn't know how to scale it. Right? The next steps weren't obvious to us. That was my first stint. During that time, we started looking around the region. Are there any other companies trying to do what we do? We found this tiny little company in Israel called Waze. They were only in Israel doing what we're doing. Right? So we're like, these guys are onto something. That means we are onto something. But then we had a different strategy, but we thought we could be faster to the market, but we didn't know, we had no support. And then Waze entered the market. We were the first Waze users here in Malaysia. When we first launched Waze back then, it was a blank app. There were no maps because they were also map building. As you drive, the maps appear.
Yeah.
So they were also crowdsourcing map information, which we were not doing. We were layering it on top of any maps, right? So we thought we had a distinct advantage. But then Waze came in with their muscle and they had all of that and thought, there's no way we can beat Waze. So then I kind of wrapped that up. Good experiment, moved on, did other things. We ventured into food and beverage business. I did that for about 10 years. Little did I know that small little time that I worked on that was what my co-founder now, Prem, saw as that's the kind of experience that I need in a co-founder, right? So we started off Asia Mobiliti as what we thought would be just a bus tech company, because we thought the major pain point in our public transport system are the buses. So unreliable. And just to answer one question, where is my bus?
Yeah, that's my number one question.
Where is my bus?
Where is my bus?
So we thought we'll be like a bus tech journey planning for buses kind of thing.
Okay.
We realized that very quickly we can solve the problem using IoT and using cloud-based services. We could very easily solve the problem. But then we realized that isn't really moving the needle for the city. Right?
Not really, because I think this kind of app is quite common in Singapore at least.
Yes.
And everyone is using it.
Yeah.
So wouldn't that work for you as well in KL?
Because we felt that it will work for those who are regularly have chosen to use buses. We have got an environment where a lot of people are not even considering the use of buses because they have already committed to driving. So in order to move the needle, you had to do multimodal. You had to be everything. So then we realized we actually had to grow into a larger vision. It has to be mobility as a service. It needs to be multimodal. It needs to take into account driving, public transport, all of that, in order to move the needle for a city like Kuala Lumpur, where 18% of our trips are completed with a public transport mode. Only 18% modal share. Right? And that has remained like that irrespective of all the new rail lines that have come up. Right? You're about 18, 19, maybe you've gone up to maybe about 20% or so. That's a minuscule amount with the amount of investments that have been made publicly into infrastructure. So we are at about 80% that is on private modes of transport or ride-hailing, right? Shared rides. So how do you move the needle for that, right? You have to actually take into account everything in a city, use tech in order to aggregate, integrate buses with everything else. Because you can answer the question of where is my bus, but how do I get to the bus stop? The bus stop is so far away.
Where is the bus stop?
Where is the bus stop? So there's a first mile, last mile problem, right? Buses actually don't help you with first mile, last mile, right? Because these are big buses, the 12-meter buses. It doesn't pick you up near your door. There's a fair trek for most people to a nearest bus stop. So we realized that, that will solve the problem for some people, but not for a majority of people. So then we realized very quickly we had to become more than just a bus tech company, and then that's where we are.
Okay. Integrating the bus itself, I think it's already a big challenge because you're talking about installing a lot of tracking devices on all the buses. But now you're talking about multimodal. So not just the buses, but the trains and maybe the ride-hailing and yada yada. And I think you need to have a collective effort among all the stakeholders to pull it off. So how do you do that? Because this is a big ambition.
We had the same question asked of us from everybody that we shared with along the years, especially in the early days. They said, look, this is too big a problem. Yes, it's a big problem to solve, but it's too big a problem for a startup to solve.
Yeah.
You almost need to be in government to solve this, or you must be like the biggest public transport operator to solve this. But then we realized, no, you don't need to be the transport operator to solve this. And we felt that is really unlocking the problem here. Transport operators should focus on running transport services, not becoming a digital solution party to this, right? It's being able to employ technology and layer that, abstract transport services so that transport operators do what they do best. Fleet management, drivers training, running the services punctually, right? All the operational matters to transport services. But then the buses don't talk to the rails don't talk to the ride-hailing don't talk to the e-scooters. Everybody is in silo mode, right? So then we realized we actually had to build a platform, not a product. It's a platform that consists of multiple products for all the various transportation modes. And that means if you're a transport service provider, we can work with you. We can work with every transport service provider. And it's a plug-and-play thing using technology that suddenly you can then use our products to connect to your passengers without you having to own and invest in that entire tech stack, right? So we decided to now bridge that layer. So it's a platform strategy. So you think about a similar platform strategy like, for example, your cloud services, Amazon Web Services and Google Cloud Computing, right? And Microsoft Azure. It's the same platform strategy. So you've got applications or you've got your services that you do, but you don't need to build your own server room. You don't need to build your own data center to host it anymore, right? So we are that platform that helps you reach your end users and deliver your services, right? So in this case, we decided to now build a platform, a digital platform for mobility that can be deployed in any city, easy plug and play for any transport service providers, multimodal, that does not allow us to become a transport operator to solve this problem. We actually make it easier for transport service providers to digitalize their services, right? So that was a strategy that we took in order to unpack the problem.
But I still think that you need to do a lot of convincing to the service providers to jump on the bandwagon together with you. Do you need the help from government agencies to help you to do that, or it is simply just a business pitch and then they will just buy in?
It's a good question, Frankie. Most people don't realize the fact that while a lot of our public transport services are government-owned, it is operated by private companies that are owned by the government. Pasarana is a private company.
Yeah, but
KTMB
owned by the government.
Is a private company.
Right.
So we treat them like any other enterprise. The second point is not all public transport services in Malaysia are operated by those two players. If you go to a town like Seremban, for example, there is no Rapid Seremban, there is no Rapid KL. So a lot of our cities, the second-tier cities, do not have national public transport operators operating services there. There are still buses there, but they are run by smaller companies operating public services, right? So we realized there is a huge market of smaller second-tier operators, and those were our first clients. Right?
Okay.
And we saw what they wanted. They wanted was a very simple telematics and connected vehicle system to connect my bus service to Google Maps. So we built that system out. That's our earliest product, which we call now Vehicle I/O, because it has grown to support any vehicle. So now that same VO system runs on buses, runs on trains, runs on trucks, runs on passenger vehicles. We have even installed it on golf buggies. It has grown and evolved over time, but that was our very first product. So as you can see, we started with core systems, not yet even passenger-facing systems yet. It's just for the transport service providers. Let me solve your problem.
Yeah.
Because they were complaining about, back then, look, I'm running my bus service here. It's not on Google Maps.
Yeah.
Nobody can find my bus service. So we said, look, I could build you an app, but that's an app for one small guy. Right? So we had to architect a strategy that allows us to start with the transport service providers first, enterprise-facing products first, before we come consumer-facing. So now, as of last year, we have got a huge consumer-facing product now, but that's part of an entire platform. It's the same platform. On one end, it's to serve the transport service providers. On the other hand, serves the passengers, the end users.
Right. So the whole journey, there is no government involved at all. You're just
we are
pure business.
Yeah. We have run it like a traditional startup in all true sense, privately funded. Build the technology, develop the technology, go and get your clients, prove ourselves, right? Our first government-funded service is our DRT service that came after 5 years of us being in operation. right? So we had to be able to prove ourselves out there because, like how you have rightfully pointed out, being able to build a business that only rely on government-funded services is not a sustainable business, right? And it's very difficult to do that unless you've proven yourself, because you're up against the big boys, and the big boys can be from even overseas and foreign competition. We are obviously the only ones doing this in Malaysia, but we're not the only ones in the world doing this, right? There are many other huge corporations with very advanced products that also cost a lot, that does what we are doing. But it's all not practical, not sustainable for cities in the developing world. Right? This is the market that they would love to be in, but they are not cost effective. So that's my competition, right? The big corporations out there with the big brand names. But for us to be able to win bids and win contracts, and we have been very successful at that, simply because we are cost effective, we own the technology, we build it here, it's made in Malaysia. And if I'm going to compete with a German tech or a Japan tech, I've already won halfway already, right? So in that sense, we have had very compelling strategic advantages that has caused us to win some flagship deals.
Well, I can see this business go very far from here. And I'm pretty sure a lot of investors are attracted to your business model. So along the way, did you manage to get some investors to put some money in the, in the company?
This is our 6th year of operations. We have had 3 funding rounds. Thus far, we are actually currently in the midst of our A round funding. So we had 2 seed rounds and a pre-A round. And our very first investor, under a year of us being in existence, we secured a huge strategic investor in the form of AirAsia Digital. So we have got Southeast Asia's largest airline as a shareholder, and they still remain as an investor today. We had them early on because actually it was the foresight of Tony Fernandez who really liked what we were doing, but he also always had a digital aim for the airline. It wasn't a post-pandemic thing. They've always wanting to do this, right? Become that super app. They made very few investments through their corporate VC. We were one of the very few ones that is still independently operated. We are not owned in a majority by AirAsia. And then, of course, subsequent round from a local investment company, and that same company followed on in our pre-A round, which we closed in end of 2022. We have also fundraised in a very unconventional way. There's no VCs yet.
No VCs yet.
No VCs
They're
yet.
all strategic investors.
All of them are strategic investors or investors who are really sold out with a mission rather than an exit. Very public impact oriented investors. And so with our current round, we are kind of like going to continue on that same trend. We may see a participation of 1 or 2 VCs with a regional footprint. And so that's also the reason why we felt that going to the traditional sources of startup funding, VC routes, is not something that VCs in this region can get behind very easily. Right? If you realize how the VCs in this region operate, and I can be frank with this, and they would all agree, is that they are always looking for signals from the other parts of the world. Find a signal that would show what we are doing. You can't, right? You can't find a direct comparison. So
it's very vague. It's very hard for them to see that, hey, this venture can get me 10 times, 100 times.
Yes. Yeah. But the ones who see it are the ones who get it, right? We have shown and we have proven that we are not a flash in the pan. I think after a certain number of years, you have established your credibility and recognition that now we are seen as market leader in Southeast Asia. Our big announcement just on the 1st of March was Southeast Asia's first mobility as a service app. That dream that we started in the first year of saying, look, at some point we will have this in the hands of commuters in KL. Now it's a reality, right? But it needed investors who would trust in the long-term execution of the vision and not a quick one-product strategy in order to gain clients.
Just now you mentioned on the 1st of March you launched your app. I think the app is called Track. You call yourself Southeast Asia Mobility as a Service app. But ultimately, as at today, that app is still predominantly just a Kuala Lumpur app, I suppose.
Yes.
So how long do you think you need to take for you to become a Southeast Asian map?
Yeah, so the platform is ready for scaling. It's ready, obviously, to scale anywhere in the world. In fact, we have already been receiving requests from the Middle East and other parts of the world that is beyond Southeast Asia. I think in terms of timeline now, it's usable within Klang Valley. with all modes of transport that's there, including public transport. Expansion into other cities in Malaysia will happen next. At the same time, you can also start seeing other cities in Southeast Asia appearing within the app. You take this analogy, right? It's almost like being able to set up zoos everywhere. It consists of many kinds of animals, and you want to launch a new zoo in a new city, right? You don't need every animal in the world. You just need a selection that is good enough for the people, right? So similar strategy. We have taken an approach in Malaysia at least where we launched DRT first. So let me speak about that. That's actually a key enabler for mobility as a service. It's part of our strategy. DRT stands for Demand Responsive Transit. So you've got LRT, Light Rail Transit, MRT, BRT. So we are kind of quite familiar with that terminology. But LRT, MRT, and BRT refers to modes of transport or the modes of the vehicle, type of vehicle, right? Light rail, mass rapid, bus rapid. A DRT, on the other hand, has got nothing to do with the choice of vehicles, nothing to do with infrastructure, physical infrastructure. It's all about the use of software to enable on-demand shared rides services. And that means on-demand buses and on-demand vans, right? That's what DRT is for. We are the first to launch this a year ago. So we didn't launch the app on the 1st of March. We launched the app a year ago. But on the 1st of March, it became multimodal. Okay. It was first launched as a demand-responsive transit passenger app where you can book rides on it for first and last mile rides to a nearby LRT station, for example. Right. So we launched that first. So we're using DRT to enable mobility as a service. The reason is because if you can't fix your first mile and last mile, forget about the trains and the buses. I can't get to the train station anyway.
Understand.
Right? So we're using DRT to unlock that. So now we have shown that we have been able to do that in Kuala Lumpur, which is one of the hardest places to do this, mind you. But having said that, I think many other cities in the developing world share very similar characteristics as Kuala Lumpur. Right?
Why is it hard?
Well, you have that whole mindset thing, right? Where they say,
even if you deploy, maybe nobody's going to use it.
Nobody's going to use, or how can you do this on your own? You need to work very closely with everybody else, right? Yes, we do work closely. We have shown how we can forge partnerships with a lot of these major operators, right? So we have worked with the likes of Prasarana, we have worked with the likes of KTMB, right? We've got an airline on board that we've not yet activated yet, right? But with DRT, we built our own DRT system, our own DRT service. We're the first in Malaysia to launch a DRT service in March of 2023, right? The first zone is in Puchong, right? Which currently still runs right now. Our most matured service is in Puchong. That is then converted into a service that is funded by Asia Mobiliti, right? So we've got a total of 5 zones now. So we use that first, help people breach their first mile, last mile first, right? And then once you do that, now you can get to the station, start planning your journey from there, right? Okay. We've also then incorporated parking sites, park and ride sites. There are 5 park and ride sites as of now with real-time parking availability. So that's one of the key things, right? So where do you park so that you can then take an LRT, take an MRT? That's a key consideration. That is what I meant by multimodal. So all along the years, Malaysians have always thought, and the strategies have been employed by stakeholders whereby it's either or. It's always either or. It's either public transport or driving, right? So you've got to give up your car in order to use public transport. That should not be the case, right? It's not realistic, right? For most of us, depending on where you live, the most effective, reliable way to get out of your house is your car. But you don't need to drive all the way. Can I find places for you to park that maybe cost less than parking in the city center, right? Park and then hop on a DRT ride to get to where you need to go, to a station, for example. Or park and ride sites like shopping malls, right? There are actually great park and ride sites, but we always think, shopping malls is just, shopping mall. But a lot of shopping malls actually are built very close by to transit hubs and transit stations. So we have actually got 2 major shopping malls with real-time parking availability who are park and ride sites. Now, those malls become park and ride sites in my journey planner.
Oh.
So when you plan your journey with driving, you can actually drive rather than driving into the city, drive and park here, and then hop on an LRT because you could walk 3 minutes to an LRT station from there. We work all of that out for you.
And I'm sure many malls will want to work with you because it draws traffic to their mall.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Speaking of this DRT system, right?
Yes.
It means you need to deploy your own fleet on the ground.
Yes.
And wouldn't that change your business model? Because so far we have talked about technology and most of the time it's asset light. And now you're talking about deploying buses, vans and stuff like that.
So we have currently close to 20 vehicles out there across our 5 zones. These are 15-seaters up to 19-seater vehicles. We can go up to 30-seater if we wanted to. We are primarily a B2B model. While we do have consumer-facing applications and products, but the entire commercial model is based on B2B and B2B2C, right? So we help our B2B partners reach the consumer, right? With DRT, obviously now there's a dedicated fleet, because this is not Grab where it's third-party drivers and third-party vehicles.
It's your assets. Right?
Yeah, but we are still asset light. So we worked out even a model for that does not disrupt our model. And so we have been engaged and selected by the Selangor government through the Selangor Mobiliti scheme to operate DRT services for the state. And so as far as we are concerned, we are the service provider, right? That's what we do. As far as fleet is concerned now, I don't own any single vehicle there. I engage fleet operators, like what I've mentioned. There are actually many fleet operators in Malaysia who are running public transport services, right? And they are there, they've got the experience managing the drivers, managing the fleet. We engage them and say, look, you are now going to provide a service to track rides. You become a fleet operator for this zone.
Not just that, you help them to maximize their utilization as well.
Absolutely. So I don't need to do everything to solve the problem, right? I just need to work with everybody to solve the problem.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, how do you make money out of this? Yes, I understand that it is from a B2B kind of arrangement, but how do you charge your clients?
Every single one of our products are delivered as a service.
Okay.
So it's as a service model, even though there's a fleet, right? It's basically mobility as a service, right? So our clients, be it a client that wants to connect their conventional buses to the cloud, for example, using our VO system, the connected vehicle system, it's as a service. You're paying it as a service, even though there's hardware there, but you're paying it for usage, size of fleet, and time period, right? Like a SaaS model, but for transportation and mobility. So every single one of our products, including track rides, we work with transit agencies. We are actually in discussions with other state governments, other transit agencies, even Rapid KL, who wants to convert their low-performing feeder bus routes to DRT, right? So there is a model there for them. So we either go in partnership with revenue sharing, because these are all fare collection businesses, or we go in order to serve a need of an agency, like in Selangor, for example, who is investing into buses and into DRT. They need the service providers to come and run this for them. And since DRT is heavily software-centric and tech-centric, they deal with us rather than with the fleet operators, which is a very smart move, because then we manage service performance compliance because we have the data for it, right? So we are actually monitoring the fleet operators, performance using our system. I know exactly how much usage the vehicles are being put to. I know exactly when the drivers log on. I know exactly when they reach the pickup. ETA compliance for track rides for our DRT system is real time. Is measured in real time. So we know exactly whether our service is on time or it's late. Right? We're not waiting for the passenger to give feedback, because the entire system is built using technology and data. Right? So because of that, it makes sense for any stakeholders, any clients in this case, is ultimately I want a fleet operator or I want a service provider who can not just activate the service for me, but also can actually monitor the performance of this, which is key, right? There's no point having buses if the buses are all late. But with DRT, it's demand responsive, and therefore we are monitoring that in real time as it happens, right? What time did the passenger get actually picked up, and what time was the passenger dropped off, and compare that to the ETAs that was given to the passenger. How far away are we from that? That's a world-class product.
It definitely is.
Yeah. So we have got world-class systems built in Malaysia that has been deployed in Malaysia that we are very confident that we'll be able to scale this outside as well.
One last question before I let you go around. It is a big business, and there's a lot of planning that you need to do in order to pull this off. What keeps you awake at night? Because I just cannot imagine the workload and the stress that you are facing.
Yes, that's a very pertinent question. That is a very real question. I work hard, right? And I enjoy my work. My work gives me pleasure, right? And I've recently found this as well, that it does keep me up in a sense where, the wheels are always moving, right? But I enjoy that. I really enjoy that, right? There is obviously a lot happening. We have got to do a lot with very little, right? The size of the team that we've got is growing, but we grow slowly. Very, conservative as to how we fundraise, how much we spend, and just being able to be really wise and disciplined about that, But yeah, everything in a business will keep the founder up. And there are nights when I'm up that I am reading something and I've got some idea about this and I've got, hey, we need to look at that. But that's really what I think I'm geared to do. But at the same time, I've got a family and I need that balance, So the usual challenges of life in a city like KL, in a nation like Malaysia, where we really have access to almost anything that we want. If you think about it, right? We really have access to almost anything we want. Information, yup. Infrastructure, very decent, right? Access to opportunities, jobs, education is all there. So I'm also at the same time being very reflective with the sense that actually we are blessed in that sense, and I need to make the most of this. It has to be put to good use and must in turn be a blessing to the nation. And that is what drives me. And that is why when I'm up not thinking that how is it that this is going to help me, but I'm up thinking, okay, these small steps that I make, many small steps that I make, that we make as a company in Asia Mobility, will lead to a giant leap for the nation. I don't mind being up late, staying up late, worrying about this. There's a lot more grey hair on me than when I first started. But that's really the joy and the satisfaction that comes, I think, beats all of that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. It is a very exciting company. I think I'm lost of words right now. And hopefully the next time that I see you again, it's going to be a Southeast Asia company.
Yes.
And hopefully by that time you can share more about Asia Mobility. And until then, I hope all the best to you.
Thank you so much,
Frankie. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And for those who like this episode, remember to subscribe and turn on the bell notification so that you don't miss any of the episodes. You can also check us out on Spotify. So see you guys in our next show.